So, this podcast was leaving vengeance to God. So we're out of the vein that we've been in for a few weeks and into a different vein, a more comfortable vein, a less uncomfortable vein. Alright. Does anybody have anything they want to say about the podcast? It was valid. Why are you taking my notes? My notes. Do you need to look at the transcription?
Well, I know I listened to it, but I'm like...
Yeah, I was like, you listened to it on the figure. What was he talking about? Bitches, okay, that's it.
I got 2 transcriptions. Anybody need to look at it for a refresher?
What does 74?
Yeah, because we got off on the...
No, we listened to it.
70. Joseph started trying
We
to...
listened to it.
Trying to what?
Trying to figure out what that number was.
And he kept going back to 128. Well, he said 128. Where did he multiply by 1? I was like, that was just an example. Maybe that's the 128. Oh, Nana was going to come tonight, but then she...
Relax.
Made other plans.
She's got teenage kids. I told her to bring them.
I want to know why Peter asked him. How many times should I forgive?
Maybe because
You want to know what?
sort of an excuse to kill Judas.
Yeah.
Is that where we are?
Wait a second.
I
Okay.
can't remember what point that was.
The closest person I know of to Peter is sitting right here. Do you really have to ask why Peter said, so how many times do I have to forgive before I can just stab him in the leg or something?
Okay.
It's a valid question.
A valid point.
It's really valid when you look through the scriptures. You know how some people pick verses and they like to just this verse is great and they ignore the rest of the Bible. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. You know, that aspect. I love that aspect here because I'm one of the Lord's tools. So because of that, vengeance is yours. I will exact it for you. But sadly, that's not actually valid. That's extreme cherry picking out of scripture.
Does that mean a Christian should never be part of a team that prosecutes people to send them to prison or execute?
No, because that falls under civil service, which we talked about later on in the podcast. In Romans 13, verses 1 through 7, Paul talks about the government is actually exists as an arm of God to carry out God's vengeance.
They are the servants of God. I carried out the Lord's vengeance. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Let everyone submit to the governing authority, since there's no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are instituted by God. So then the one who resists that authority is opposing God's command, and those who oppose it will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Do you want to be unafraid of the authority? Do what is good, and you will have its approval. For it is God's servant for your good. If you are wrong, be afraid, because it does not carry the sword for no reason. For it is God's servant, an avenger that brings wrath on the one who does wrong. Therefore, you must submit not only because of wrath, but also because of your conscience. And for this reason, you pay taxes, since the authorities are God's servants, continually attending to these tasks. Pay your obligations to everyone. Taxes to those you owe taxes. Tolls to those you owe tolls. Respect to those you owe respect. And honor to those you owe honor. So those people that are serving in those positions are serving as an extension of God's arm. His arm of vengeance on the earth. So, yeah.
I concur.
Some people have tried to use the beginning of that, what I just read, to talk about church authority. It's church authority, so you have to submit to church authority because God sets up church authority. But then Paul specifically goes on to identify you pay your taxes to these people, and no church has ever levied a tax against these people, or at least not rightfully levied a tax. So he's not talking about church authority. He's specifically talking about governmental authority.
There are other verses that mention that.
Oh yeah?
There are other verses that mention honoring people in the church that are about you.
I do think we're pretty excellent. I am good and I am not a...
You can honor somebody, yeah.
He's talking about government in that passage.
What?
Paul is talking about the government in that passage.
Yeah. But I've heard people try to use this particular to support church authority. And that's not what he's talking about in this instance.
They wouldn't need to.
Huh?
They wouldn't need to do that. There's other passages.
Just because they don't need to doesn't mean they don't.
Never actually heard them bring up any other passages in particular, but okay, so last week we talked about was it last week James and John arguing about who's the greatest disciple, or starting a disagreement amongst the disciples. So this week we come across James and John again. You guys, troublemakers, the troublemakers of the group.
Let's see. If he's Peter, who's James and John?
So, what? I don't know. So, in Luke 9, Jesus is headed towards Jerusalem with the disciples, and he sends some on to a Samaritan city to make preparation, and the Samaritans refuse to let them stay the night because they're on their way to Jerusalem. And James and John, they're like, hey, you want us to call down fire from heaven and just consume the whole city like Elijah did? That's funny. These guys are funny.
That sounds like a good idea, actually. That sounds like a good idea to me.
Not to Jesus, it didn't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
It reminded me of the conversation that we had at the end of the table last week about Elijah. Had the prophecies about Elijah having to come before the Messiah could come.
Yeah.
And then these two are going, hey teacher, hey rabbi, hey, do you want us to do miracles like Elijah did? Do you want us to do that? That really seems to fit James and John's MO to be like, that's right, we operate at the level of Elijah. Maybe we are Elijah. You just don't know it. We'll call down fire from heaven.
Now that was John the Baptist.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
John the Baptist was Elijah?
yes. According to Matthew, what was it, 17 that we read?
When did we read that?
That was our discussion.
At the end of the table, we talked about Matthew 17. They go on the Mount of Transfiguration, and Moses and Elijah are there, and then they're leaving, and Jesus reveals to who was that? The disciples that went with him?
James and John?
James, John, Peter
Peter
James,
was
and John.
there.
Peter, James, and John.
Yeah.
Reveals to them that he's the Messiah, and they said, whoa, wait. Doesn't Elijah have to come before the Messiah comes? And Jesus says, you're right, Elijah does have to come before the Messiah comes. And in fact, He already came, and the people didn't recognize him, and they killed him. And it says, and then the disciples knew he was talking about John the Baptist.
Where is that?
I think it's 17.
Matthew 17.
That's an interesting verse of scripture.
I've never heard that before. It's there.
I think he's talking about the spirit of Elijah.
Well,
But
we are spirits.
yes,
We are spirits that have souls, and we live in bodies.
so do you think Elijah's spirit actually came back?
Yes. I'm of the belief that John the Baptist was the reborn person of Elijah's prophet.
Is that what the Greek bears out?
Doesn't really answer either way.
It's like somebody could say, for example, that I have the spirit of my grandfather. See what I'm saying?
I mean, you could try to say that, but
Yeah, I mean,
But it's not backed up in the Bible.
yeah.
one example of reincarnation in the Bible doesn't make a law of reincarnation. One example of a witch raising a ghost doesn't make a law of everyone becomes a ghost. And both of those examples are in the Bible. Those both happen in the Bible. A witch summons a ghost, and Saul, what's the word? Asks him for advice, and consults the ghost.
So,
And then later we see evidence of reincarnation, but neither of these examples make it a law.
I hesitate to call it reincarnation. I want to call it something else.
But by the definition of the word, that's what it is. Just like the word evolution is not a bad word, it just means change. Just because the world wants to hijack something and make it nasty doesn't mean we can't continue to use it the right way.
I still tend to call it something else.
Your
I don't
prerogative.
know what,
What
but I
would
call it
you call
something else.
reborn,
Reborn?
born again. Elijah.
So John was born again?
Elijah.
Elijah
He was
born.
reborn.
Elijah.
Reborn, not reincarnated?
Yeah, he was just reborn. The spirit of Elijah was reborn into John the Baptist.
If Elijah's spirit actually came back, that would be interesting.
Well, Elijah's body never died, so technically there's no
He left this planet.
breaking of any kind of theological rules there.
Well, there was no immaculate conception there. They just conceived.
Never heard of him.
So
Yeah. You know,
for him to have the spirit of Elijah, for him to be Elijah,
they have sharks in it.
There's lots of scriptures that talk about God forming you in the womb. God specifically forms every baby in the womb. So, I mean, if God's stitching babies together in the wombs, He's also creating that spirit.
Don't say stitching.
Stitching's not a good word.
Not for
I get
babies
this
and
look
boys.
of bones and like sinews, stitching the sinews over top of the bones. Not a good word.
You know, he sounds like Frankenstein.
yeah,
Not
Frankenstein.
Down there.
But in the case of Elijah with John, that's more
Take the
stitchery.
dress off the mother's face.
I see it.
Stitchery.
What do the commentaries say about that? About John?
They agree that that's reincarnation.
They do.
Yeah, all the way back to the early 1800s, the commentaries agree that John the Baptist was the reincarnated person of Elijah.
I would just use a different word.
I'm not afraid of words.
Oh, I'm not afraid of it. I'm just waiting to
So what do you guys think about that fold math? Isn't that fun?
Yes.
The what?
Fold math.
Oh, the fold. Oh, yeah, that was interesting.
I didn't.
You didn't listen to the podcast?
I have a migraine, so I skipped that word.
You skipped that.
I
I've heard it before.
That was some pretty hard math.
It is complicated math.
That's what Joseph got under.
So I have a piece of paper, right? Or I have my ability to forgive. This is all the ability to forgive I ever have. It's a finite resource. One, right? If I fold it,
That's
it's now 2. I still have the same finite resource, but now it's 2 times that I can use it. I fold it again, it's still the same finite resource, but I now have 4 times. I fold it again, so on and so on and so on and so on. That's fold math.
But you can only fold it 7 times.
Actually, on the
Try it.
10th time, a piece of paper breaks.
No, try it. You can only fold it 7 times.
1, 2, 3. I don't know if I'm going to get to 7.
Piece of paper this big to start with.
5, 6.
Even if you had a bigger piece of paper, you couldn't do it.
7. Nope, can't get to 7.
I tried it before.
For some reason,
I was like, I know where
you
this is going.
can't fold a piece of paper more than 7 times.
I've actually seen a machine do it. Number 10, the paper just all the seams ripped.
Yeah, it's probably without ripping,
That's fold math.
without ripping the seams out. Yeah.
Okay, so the point.
I folded it 6 times, so I should have 2 to the power of 6. Whatever that number
I
is.
don't know what that means.
36.
That's how you mathematically state
I
fold.
can't math.
2 to the power of 6.
That's what my son's in co-op. Because I can't math.
64.
No, it's 2 times 2
64.
times 2 times 2, 6 times.
64.
Is it?
128.
Are you good doing it on your calculator?
Okay, here's what the point is.
Yeah, but I don't have a graphing calculator, so.
The point is.
6 power?
I have one.
2 to the 6th power, yeah.
The point
Turn it
is.
sideways, you'll get power buttons.
What is 2 to the 6th power?
64?
Yeah, Google your math.
64, yes.
Yeah. So now I have 64 squares, or 64 layers when it was folded. But the point there
The
is,
point is.
Yeah, that is a really large figure.
Forgive forever.
if you forgave someone once a second, it would take them
Oh, yeah.
261,143 years to run out of chances for you to forgive them at 70 times 7-fold.
Just like the paper runs out of its ability to fold itself more than 7 times. As humans, we run out of our ability to do it ourselves.
Oh.
You think you can forgive yourself?
One of his parables.
You can't forgive yourself. God's going to help you.
You have to submit.
God has got to help you. Yeah, I know from experience that when someone wrongs me twice in a row,
Yeah, I want to go down to the gun store.
in and
buy
of
a
myself,
sniper
I don't have the
rifle.
ability. I can't.
Sounds like a personal problem.
I can't trust
Yeah.
them. I won't trust them again. On and on.
Jesus said, he slapped me on the cheek, he's supposed to turn me on the cheek. And then he slaps that cheek, and then you don't have any more cheeks left, right? So that's 2 times.
What I'm saying is I don't have the ability of myself.
What is
I have a
happening?
relationship with God.
He just has to let go, it's his own
can't.
fault.
No, no, you're right, not in your own power. Theoretically,
As a human being,
theoretically, we can't do anything.
I know. Yeah, we think we can do things on our own.
Yeah, look at how the world is
Did
messed
you
up.
take your
Y'all
migraine
missed me
medication?
last week.
It was so quiet last week.
It's such a good uninterrupted conversation.
Yeah, they like talked a long time.
See, you weren't here. Penny wasn't here.
We even
And
moved
these
the
two don't talk,
discussion
they just
closer
sit
to the
there.
camera. So they could hear.
We did that at 7:30.
You had a
At
valid
7:30 we moved it down there to continue the conversation.
Conversation. We went into overtime.
Yeah.
I went home.
I was good.
Please don't. We're gonna wake up tomorrow.
All right.
Oh my God. Why are you looking at me like that?
Because he's authorized.
Like,
He's your husband, he's authorized.
It scares me.
Hell no.
sociopath.
He's sociopathic.
Yeah, when he looks at me like that,
What-
I know what that
how-
means.
how are you
There's
looking at
something
her?
cooking.
How-
You're
how-
in front of the camera, but you're not.
I told her I would. I told
Now
her.
they can see you.
Before she had surgery, I was like,
Hey! Don't be doing that.
He's going.
okay.
I can see it. Don't raise your hands at nobody but me.
So she was like,
Not like that
right,
either.
hold on to your. But I didn't expect you to get better so fast.
Yeah.
Why did you?
I've learned with my mom never commit to anything.
I hope that happens to nobody in the
Well, no, they're getting married, so they need to commit to something.
Not to his mother.
Not to my mother.
No, but he said don't commit to anything.
Oh.
No, I've learned to not to commit to anything with my mother.
Oh, she's watching. Yeah, because she's never watched before, but tonight she's having watch.
How's this face look?
I can see your eyes.
Because we did it late Saturday. I got home, it was for an hour, I had to go to work. Got home.
You look like
I got home, ate, I went back to bed, stayed in bed, right until 8 o'clock. When I get from the store,
It's not that enthralling of a conversation.
I was interested in But again, give me something else.
You got everyone's attention.
It looks like a dinosaur that has the holes for the requirement right there.
no, we don't need any more. So, we were just looking and making comments on the fact how slow you guys were, and feeling sorry for how slow you were. And then he goes, whoosh, and I went, oh no, oh. I think I did something.
That's where
If you want to check it too. But, yeah, we were just like, and then
Bet you get some on the,
he looked so good, but it was like,
Oh, you need New
I feel
Balance.
bad.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say no without
Why do you
scrolling
have your
through
shoe
no.
off?
No, it doesn't work.
I don't know, I just wear
And
them.
then you think something was really
You
wrong.
can't take your hair, take it off.
It's got an N on the outside.
Want to smell?
They're both looking out the window.
No, we were just looking.
No,
Whenever y'all got here and I was done with everything, we got a little pub, so I can.
Yeah, I got a pair I bought at Walmart. They were Dr. Scholl's.
Yeah.
They got that gel.
Get my little hole in
Gel.
Yeah.
And they were on clearance. They were like half price. I got them for like $13.
Whoa, that's pretty nice.
I mean,
They look just like that. Except, well, they don't have anything on the outside. They're there's no symbol. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna make you.
And apparently she's your face.
The most comfortable pair of tennis shoes I ever had. Skechers.
Yeah.
Skechers.
Yeah. Skechers. Very popular.
Like, I told my manager today, if I don't make $100 today, I'm not walking out that door. Like,
Because we went to the outlet on Airport Freeway. Around Forest Ridge, east of where you are. The shoes that they had there were like $6, but I bought these at Goodwill for $7.
Well, if they can fit you.
Oh, they're the most comfortable tennis shoes I've ever had.
They're actually.
Except they're almost worn out now.
You're lucky to find some at the Goodwill.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Like 13 or 14.
So anyone who kills Cain will be sevenfold. And then Abimelech kills Cain. No, Lamech. Lamech kills Cain. 70 and sevenfold. Between what?
Lamech went for vengeance instead of letting God.
It's the same words is why I made the correlation.
Weird papers.
Like weirdly shaped papers. Are you
Hit him right in the head, so he's like,
Except for today, because of the migraine days me, I'm like, oh.
I was like, I'm gonna get a dead wheel in my face.
And then it goes over his head.
What did you say? What did she hit me? The glasses. Yeah, I heard that she hit me.
it's time to say, what time it is? Just now,
It's
7?
now 7. It's always 7.
The whole thing in 30 minutes.
Really?
Not even. Didn't even take 30 minutes to talk about it. 15 hours to put together, 10 minutes to record, 20 minutes to analyze.
Hey, at least it took some time to analyze.
Yeah, sometimes we come in here and everybody's just like,
Playing Pokemon like they were last week.
Hey.
Okay, well, I'll throw something out for discussion. So, God has ordained, or not, maybe not ordained, but all of, let's say, the politicians in this country are supposed to be chosen by God. Okay. So how, I mean, I have an opinion, but I'm just throwing this out. How are we supposed to look at politicians who promote homosexuality and all other kinds of things that as Christians we don't agree with?
we'll take it a step further. And put your shoes in, I mean, think about Adolf Hitler. Was, according to Romans, was that 13? Yep, God ordained to be in the position he was in.
I mean, even
Saddam Hussein.
even in the biblical times of when that was stated,
Caesar.
it is. I mean, think of
Paul's saying this in a time where they're literally putting Christians onto slides, the giant razor blades, to chop them in half.
So it was in a time when, so the persecution we deal with here in this country, nothing compares to what they were dealing with when he stated it. Not only,
You're talking about, I mean, honestly, what you're bringing up is petty issues. It doesn't change. The sentiment he's saying about people that are literally killing Christians is the same statement for the people that are supporting beliefs that are opposite to your faith. You're supposed to support them and pray for them and honor them and recognize that God put them in that position.
And vote.
I don't believe in voting, but
I think God put him in that position as a punishment to a country.
Well,
You know, Hitler wasn't good for Germany. Let's put it that way.
he wasn't good for
But God put him in. For what reason? As a punishment to Germany.
Well,
But Germany didn't suffer from that. The Jews suffered from that.
Germany ended up better off at the end.
Germany got out of that. Got a good deal out of that.
yeah, we rebuilt the country.
Yeah.
Just like Iraq and Afghanistan.
Germany ended up better off. But people, the Jews weren't. But Germany as a country ended up better off.
Yeah. So my opinion is that God just sort of allows things to happen because we all have free will, and the devil rules this earth. Right?
I mean, I think Paul would disagree with that opinion, but
Well, God gave Satan the rulership over this earth.
Adam gave him the rulership over the earth, but
Well, okay, well somebody did, but it says in the Bible.
God gave it to Adam. Adam gave it to Satan.
Satan rules the prince of the air. So, my opinion is it's all part of God's plan. It's all in His plan. Because it's all coming to, the end time, Armageddon, and battle, and so you have to have a lot of evil in the world to make that come about.
Just to bring the plans about.
So if God can do no evil and outsources that to the devil, then that makes perfect sense. We talked about a few weeks ago where we brought up, several weeks ago, where we brought up the verses where God says, God is talking and says, I do good and I do evil. Or I create evil. Or what were the exact wording there? Where God talked about creating evil. I create evil. So it's not outside the realm of what God does to put a person in leadership that doesn't fit our finite human definition of moral good.
Well, again, that I think that could be a judgment on a country. Germany is still being judged every day. Whenever I think of Germany, guess what I think about? Yeah, that's what I think.
I think of the fact that they're the #1 world power economically right now on the entire planet and own more of the world than anyone other than China.
Really?
Yes. They are the strongest economically. They run the EU.
What's left of it?
They are the strongest of the economic power. So yeah, I mean it's you can view them from the guise of Hitler was bad. Yeah, of course. But he also brought us Porsche and Volkswagen and built Germany.
What's that got? That's side stuff.
And before World War II, he was the good guy.
Yeah.
The guy that we allied with, the guy that was our go-to guy in Europe. We propped him up and gave him the platform he needed to then for us have to go ahead and go back in and create World War II to dethrone the guy that we put in power the first time to get rid of some other bad guy
That seems to be a
common theme of the United States.
continuing.
Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein. These people got into power because we gave them a platform and gave them power and weapons.
The guy that they overthrew in Iran.
And Iraq.
Yes, the United States has an MO, much as Israel has an MO.
Yeah, but Israel's MO is survival.
No, I mean, look, if you look at it historically, okay.
Yeah.
So the Israelites are going along great, or actually they don't exist yet. There's Abraham. He has 2 sons. They split off. It creates a Muslim religion. Israelites are going along great. They're guilty of idol worship and burning incense to other gods and adapting the other gods, whatever. In First or Second Kings, the Assyrians come in and take most of them away. The ones they don't take away become Samaritans. Right? It's another split off of the Israeli line. Then, for the rest of time, Israel's got to deal with, on the one hand, Muslims saying, oh, you've got to worship over here, and the Samaritans over here going, oh, you've got to worship over here, and the Jews in the middle going, well, guys, what about here, where this thing happened? The Samaritans are going, well, that event didn't matter. And the Muslims are going, well, that event didn't matter. So Israel's got this MO of creating these other religions that are like, no, guys, we should be worshiping over here. No, guys, we should be worshiping over here.
That's the first line of the Quran.
Yeah.
Have you ever read it?
No.
Don't.
I don't know if I could trust any English translation of it. I mean, it's either going to be biased one way or the other. And I don't have a time or resources to look into the original language.
Of what?
Of a Quran.
Oh.
It'll either be biased for Islam or against Islam, the English translation.
Yeah.
So how do I know if what I'm reading is actually what was intended when it was written?
The version that I read.
Not only that, but I don't think it's going to build up my faith in you to read it.
No, but it gives you points. If you understand what I mean. Like, you research to understand how they
If
think.
I was called to reach Muslims, sure.
Look, I'll reach everyone.
If I was specifically called to reach out to Muslims and go out of my way to
I got
find
you. I wasn't
Muslims.
trying to start a fight.
I was just saying. I did it because I was going over there. I wanted to understand because they are a deeply religious culture, and 99% of their laws stem from something that they found in the Quran. So reading it, you understand why they do some of the weird things they do is because that's what it says. Because unlike us, we have been redeemed for what our religious book would call the law.
Oh my God.
They have never been.
It's her fault. She gave me sour cream last night.
They have never been redeemed from what their religious book calls law.
Yeah.
So they still live under the laws that were wrote in the Quran. And it is
So do Jews.
Is the recorder still going?
So do a lot of Christians.
But you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
That their religious laws are crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Don't give him sour cream.
But back on what Brian was saying, when I read this section, Romans 13:1-7, I automatically start thinking about dictators that gas their own people and all of these things, these awful, awful rulers, and even historically for the Jews, Arphaxad, who came and stole the Israelites and killed them and put them in ovens and different things like this throughout history. And Paul's saying, well, governing authorities, those are anointed by God and ordained by God and put in place by God. And if you're doing what's right, if you're doing what's good, you got nothing to worry about. You don't have to be afraid of those people that are killing Christians. Just don't do bad things and they won't hurt
Just
you.
go ahead and die in peace.
Well,
We also have to consider the source. This is
Yes.
Paul. This is the guy who goes and when he's ministering to the pagans, participates in the pagan rituals. When he's going over to the Gentiles, he participated with what the Gentiles are doing. When he's with the Jews, he's doing what the Jews are doing. This is Paul. He's pretty much the moral compass is set by the people that are around you guy.
When in Rome.
Why do you have my wife's debit card?
And I don't know why anyone who actually knows that.
My debit card.
So it's certainly a hard bit of scripture to what's the word?
understand.
Reconcile with modern evangelical conservative views of bad leaders should be opposed and good leaders should be supported, when Paul's saying, no, they're all just support all of them. No such thing as bad or good leaders. They're all just leaders.
Paul seems kind of a man.
And if you're not doing what's wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. That's what Paul's saying.
But also,
Be all things to all people.
he also says in Romans that there's some people that really can't even be saved, and they're just turned over to their own depravity. second deal with it. Know where our future lies.
I know the line of I know the reference that you're talking about. He's talking about the temple horse. Horse.
Well, I think he's also talking about homosexuality.
Well, he uses specific words that are only used when talking about sex acts in the temple done to other gods. When he identifies homosexuality there. It's a very, very specific word. Very specific Greek word that he uses in that text.
So what's the English word? Gravity?
The closest English word I've found is idolatry, which Paul seems to use a lot in different versions of the word idolatry. Which abomination isn't a word that actually exists in the book of Romans, even though in the King James they use the word abomination a lot. Most of the time when they use the word abomination in Romans, it just straight is the word idolatry.
You look like you're about to bite
Different kinds of idolatry. Self-idolatry, craven image idolatry, so on and so forth. Correct.
Like Pokemon Go.
Romans 13. If all authority is ordained by God, then me sitting in a little booth checking off a box isn't going to change any outcome. Because God's going to ordain the authority that he needs in place when he needs it in place.
But it's set up as part of our government.
By the authorities.
Maybe God wants you to put the check in the right box.
The authorities
You're
set
not
up,
listening to what God's telling you.
the authorities set up those laws, those rules.
That's not a law.
No.
It's a choice.
Right.
Right.
Make
And
the
in
right
this
choice.
last election, if I had gone and checked my box for Hillary Clinton, I'm not saying I would have, because Lord knows I wouldn't have. But if I had gone and I'd checked a little box for Hillary Clinton, then that same system, if God doesn't ordain that same system, and if I lived in Texas, that same system would have said, your vote doesn't count, only the vote of these other people count, electoral college vote goes to the other guy. So whether you take it from Romans 13 perspective or from an electoral college view perspective, my individual vote only counts in the electoral college if I vote with everyone else around me. And if I'm taking Romans 13 at face value, I don't need to vote at all because God's taking care of that.
I've come to the conclusion that there's a very simple way to find out if something is good or right or not. You have to ask yourself the question, what would happen if everybody did it? What would happen if everybody was a murderer? What would happen if everybody was a thief? What would happen if everybody...
No one voted.
What would happen if everybody had an abortion?
Now, if nobody voted, if you didn't vote,
Nobody voted.
the electoral college would still get together and make the decision for you like they already do. As a matter of fact, if you go check voters' law, the members of the electoral college who are elected by Congress to vote for their state, if they don't like the way the people voted, they can vote the other way.
But they don't.
But they can.
They can.
They don't.
So if nobody voted, if no citizen ever voted in what is actually referred to as the beauty contest round,
The popular.
right? It's actually called the beauty contest round. If nobody participated in that, the electoral college would still get together and they would still choose who they wanted to be the president.
Has the electoral college ever voted against the
Yes.
popular vote?
Yes.
Yes. We just saw it. One.
When?
The last election.
Donald Trump didn't win the popular vote.
No, I'm talking about.
No, there are
That's each state.
There
Yes.
are certain
Each state.
people. There are recorded events of the electoral people in the electoral college voting
against what their people stated.
On a stand of, well, morally, I believe
No,
that
you said
person,
the last
non-person
election.
should be president.
On the
No,
last,
I'm
the
saying
last election.
the last election, the Electoral College went because of that reason. But to answer your question, yes, it has happened in the past. There are recorded events of it happening.
Okay, in this last election, Donald Trump won because of the Electoral College. He won the states, and that's the way it's set up. That's the way it's.
Yes, but the Electoral
Right.
College.
In the last election, did the Electoral College go against the people's will?
That's not what you
No,
asked.
but they have in the past.
Okay, when?
I don't,
You have to
No, I'm
look
just
it up.
asking if you don't.
They don't
have
I
the
don't know
numbers
off
in
the top
front
of
of
my
me,
head,
but
but
it has
there are
happened.
reported events of it happening.
But you seem to be under the impression that people vote and those are tallied and then it becomes a tally. That's not what happens. People vote and then another person is told, all these people voted, and so now it's your job to choose A or B option. And that person makes another decision. Separate from what you
But
voted.
the important decision is, how often have they gone against the will of the people? That's the question.
Well, it has happened.
Okay.
But I don't know how often.
Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times? I've never read up on it. I don't know.
But in the strict definition of democracy, Donald Trump never should have won because
That's not
the
true.
majority vote
That's not true.
voted for.
It is.
The way we
He
have it
lost
set
by
up-
2 million
No,
votes.
he's
That's
saying,
the set up.
he's saying the popular vote, the
But that's not how it
counted
works.
people. I know it's not how it works.
That's not how our
But
government
that's not-
works. No.
So it's happened
More people
since
voted
Thomas
for
Jefferson.
Hillary than voted for Donald Trump.
Since
With the
Thomas-
Electoral College, because of the way it's set up, he got the Electoral
It's the
College
states.
vote.
It's the states. Just because
I
there's so many
understand
people
that,
in
I understand
California
that, you're
and New York,
arguing a point which is mute,
4 times.
okay?
The electoral
More
college.
people voted for
That's-
No, that's
Hillary.
different.
Yes.
That's the beginning of the, if you read farther into that article, it actually explains.
Voted for Hillary.
There's
Have the biggest
157
population.
times.
Right,
That's why
but they
more
have
people
maybe
voted.
less.
You have a number.
electoral
Hey,
votes.
Ken, 157.
157 times, someone on the Electoral College had said, I don't care what the people voted, I'm going to vote a different way.
They're called,
I believe
they're called
something else.
faithless electors.
Okay, how often did that change the results of the election?
Probably 157 times.
Probably not.
Well, no.
There's
I
more than
know,
one-
okay.
There's not just one man in each electoral
George
college.
Bush, it happened with George Bush and Al Gore, because they had to do a recount in some of the states with Al Gore, and Al Gore had more popular votes than George Bush, but George Bush had more electoral votes, just like with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I remember that.
That's not because an Electoral College member
No,
decided to vote different than
no.
the
It's
voters.
because of the balance of the votes with the college.
And that one was close. That was only 500,000 votes.
That was close.
Well,
That was very close.
okay, honestly, this is just my opinion. I would encourage you to rethink the thing about not voting. I would encourage you to rethink it.
I live my life according to what I find here, not according to what I find out here.
Okay?
And Romans 13 says,
Not to vote.
voting is useless. God
Where does it
ordains
say-
authority.
Where does it say voting is useless?
The authorities that exist are instituted by God. There is no authority except for God. God ordains authority. God chooses who's in those positions.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And he gave us our system to choose.
No.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Sure he did. He puts it in the hearts and minds of his people to go vote for the right.
There's no more validity in your system of voting than there is flipping a coin. The same person's going to win because God ordains the authority. We can throw fleece on a dew-filled lawn and get the same result as you're voting. We can pull Uman and Thuman rocks out of a bag and get the same results as you're voting.
So-
God ordains the authority.
So real quick, in the 2016 Electoral College, 4 people whose the state went to Hillary voted for Trump. 4 electoral
Electoral college members.
went to Trump that shouldn't have.
Okay. What states were that? Say what state?
No, it's one state. The whole.
The whole 4?
Uh,
Did it change the election?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know the exact numbers. It affected the election, yes.
It definitely would have changed because those 4 would have swayed more of the electoral.
You just have to know by how many electoral college votes he won.
That's not in this article.
Okay, so my question is, I agree with what you're saying there about God ordaining people, or God putting them in that position.
And in Hawaii it happened.
But does he not use people to carry out his
Yes.
plans?
Yes. He always has.
That's my,
He always has.
well, I'm asking Bill his opinion. You and I are thinking
So,
alike, and I get
here's
that.
a
My
question.
question is, yes, God ordains, and yes, God chooses, but does he not use people to carry out his plans?
Well, let me
He
ask
always
you a
has
question.
throughout the whole history.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I know, but let me ask you this specific question. I
But
can
I
answer.
want an answer first.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Because I'm going to give the answer that he's going to give.
Maybe. If I was on the Electoral College and my vote actually counted, then God could use me to put the person that he wants into office. But the system we have right now with an Electoral College in place, my vote doesn't sway one way or the other. And if
Okay, how
every
do those
Christian
people get in place?
They're voted by Congress.
at the big conventions that we have, the Republican convention, Democratic convention, members of Congress go and they privately decide who's going to represent them in the Electoral College for each state. People that are already their buddies that they have in their pocket.
Congressmen get put in place.
God puts them in place.
How? Who elects the congressman?
It doesn't matter if we flipped coins, pulled
Okay.
No,
rocks,
we
or
don't
voted
flip
fleece.
coins. We
So,
go to a
wait,
voting booth.
listen,
Who
The same
elects
people would
Congress?
be.
We
God
don't
does.
flip coins.
God ordains authority.
Does the electoral college put the congressman in place? Who puts the congressman in place?
God does.
Yeah.
How?
Doesn't matter.
Yes, it
It
matters.
does
Sure it
matter,
matters.
because that's the question I'm asking.
Rulers have been put in place by God since the beginning of time, but long before there were elections. He doesn't need me to put a chat on a piece of paper or click a spot on a screen.
Hey, Chad, let me speak. So, Florida, the Bush Gore election, okay? The hanging chads that allowed Florida to be recounted, that pushed an election over, and votes mysteriously disappeared in a state that went Democratic, and then magically, according to the news, the next recount was Republican. Democrats that voted, their votes disappeared. If that's not an act of God, those Democrats that voted, their votes got decimated from existence. So, no matter who votes, if God wanted someone else, as
God
he
wants
did
Bush
in
instead of
that
Gore.
situation,
I agree.
He wants Trump
the
instead of
votes
Hillary.
would disappear.
Hillary.
So yes, now granted, take this. I vote every time. I'm not like him. But what I'm saying is, the fact that it doesn't matter who voted. If God wanted the outcome to be different, he would change it.
I agree with that.
So there is a point of I can understand the thought process of it doesn't matter who votes, because in the majority of areas it doesn't. You're a Texan in Tarrant County. Congratulations, your district goes Republican.
So if you're wearing Democrat, your vote literally would just be ashes in the wind.
Because it doesn't matter what you do, there are so it does now. As a Republican, I'm assuming I'm not either. So I voted independent. Doesn't matter. But as a Republican,
See, he's throwing his vote away anyway.
yeah, I throw my vote away every year.
So, what good does it do for you to vote?
Yeah, I didn't vote for either of the two people because I couldn't stand either of them.
And the Electoral College members are all Republican and Democrat.
Ross Nader.
There were several.
Wait, unless you went with the Green Party. I see that.
Might have done that. I don't always. I vote according to politics each time. I don't vote party lines.
But if everybody stopped voting, we wouldn't have a country anymore.
Yes, we would.
Yeah, we would.
Because
the ground would still be here.
We have the laws in place that if no one was to go vote, people would be appointed. The laws already exist. Is the point Bill's making. The laws exist in such a way that voting is a right and a privilege that you get to have that allows us to sway the government. And I say that in that manner because it doesn't allow everyone that ability. If you live in California, if you as a conservative, because I know you're Republican.
That's not exactly what you're about to say is conservative.
Actually, I'm not.
If you live in LA County and you're a Republican, you're screwed. And your vote doesn't matter.
Actually, I'm a Tea Party.
Still, I mean, Tea Party is part of the Republican Party.
Disgust me.
It doesn't matter. The Tea Party are still Republicans right now.
Well,
according to because you can't break off independent or you wouldn't get anything done.
It's a Republican put into a rock polisher and got look for something new.
Yeah, you are a Republican. Sorry, that's the
pissed off Republican.
So because of that, what I'm saying is it doesn't matter in certain areas of the country if you vote because you should. Do I feel that you should? I personally do. That's my personal belief.
And I don't chive him and I don't discourage him from voting because that's what he believes.
And that's fine. I'm bummed up on the time.
Dallas County, if you voted Republican in the last election in Dallas County, it didn't matter. Your vote did not count because that's a Democratic county. So the electoral college members that represent Dallas County are voting Democrat no matter what. Because they are Democrat. Well, they don't have to. They can choose their mind. They're always going to vote for a member of their same party because you don't.
Now, like Hawaii, one of the electoral colleges for Hawaii voted in this last election, voted for Bernie Sanders because he said in good conscience he could not vote for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton would have actually won the last election because she lost by so few votes. Had the electoral college all voted correctly according to what they were supposed to. According to that I read. I don't know if that's true or not, just going off of what I read online.
Say that again.
Hillary would have won if all the electoral college members had voted.
At least that's what the LA Times said.
The way they were supposed to.
If all of the Democrats in the electoral college went Democrat, she would have won.
5 electoral college. He read you the stats. 5 electoral college members didn't vote for Hillary
in one
even though
state.
They were supposed to.
Four
from one state, 1 from Hawaii, and that was enough. If all 5 had voted for Hillary the way they were actually supposed to, according to the rules,
he won by how many?
He lost the popular vote.
But he won the electoral college vote by how many? By how many?
4 votes.
I think it was 4 votes.
320 to 200 and some. Yeah, he won it by a landslide. That wouldn't have changed anything. That wouldn't have changed anything.
What time is it now?
So, when Ron Paul was running for president, I was a hardcore supporter of Ron Paul. And I encouraged people to go vote, and I was supporting him, and I was going to vote for him. And almost right before the election came up, this came up. This came across my study time, Romans 13. And I struggled with it for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, struggling with, well, what does this mean? What do I do with this? Until finally I had to decide, well, either I'm going to believe what the Bible says, or I'm going to ignore what the Bible says and go ahead and go vote anyway.
All right.
And I haven't voted.
Let's all turn to Romans 13 and see what you mean. I like to know what you mean. I'm not trying to be...
I read it.
Okay.
I already read it.
Let's read it again.
Let everyone submit to the governing authorities, since there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are instituted by God.
Right.
So then the one who resists that authority is opposing God's command. And those who oppose it will bring judgment on themselves. Okay. The rest of it's just saying, be good and you won't get in trouble, do bad and you will get in trouble, because all rulers are not a terror to good conduct. They're a terror to bad conduct. Okay? If you look in the King James, it says all authority is ordained by God, which is pretty accurate to the original language. For some reason in the CSB, they danced around it, but it's there.
Okay. Why can't, this is an honest question, why can't God, who I believe established our country? I believe that. Why can't God move upon the hearts and minds of the people to vote the way He wants us to vote?
Okay, so let's dissect your statement from the very beginning. God, who established our country by violating His own word and having them rebel against their own authority, violating His own word to create their own country. God doesn't violate His own word. God didn't move upon those people to rebel against the king. Those people were living badly and opposing the authority. They were rejecting God's word for the way they should have been living, and then formed a country out of it and said, we're a Christian country.
So people should never have a desire to be free. Right? Didn't God
was that.
Didn't God ask the Israelites to leave Egypt?
Good job.
Why did they oppose their governing authority?
Those weren't their governing authority.
God brought them out of Egypt.
That wasn't their governing authority.
They were His governing authority.
They went to live in Egypt as equals and were captured and made into slaves, no longer citizens of that government.
But then
they were slaves.
Under that government, they were slaves. Right? They were held captive by the slaves. As slaves.
Slaves are
so
not.
Why did they rebel?
Slaves are not citizens. Slaves
you
are
see
not.
What I'm saying?
And they didn't rebel. God came in and delivered them.
They didn't rebel.
How about
God did not come in and deliver our country from
how
that
do you know? How do you know that?
Because I've seen the history. I've read the history books. I've been in history classes.
So here's a question.
This was a group of men rebelling against their authority.
How many Israelites died in that rebellion?
How many what?
Israelites died in that rebellion. That was a God-ordained rebellion. No one
The
died.
Israelites that died were the ones that didn't have the blood on their doorposts.
So they didn't follow the rules, so they died.
That wasn't from rebelling.
That wasn't from rebellion. That wasn't during the rebellion. That's what I'm asking. He's comparing the two situations, whereas in American history, when we rebelled, tons of us died.
Yes.
Because we rebelled with arms, with violence, with murder and killing.
Which historically,
God ordained, hey, by the way, I'm going to free you. That's not what happened. You cannot compare one and one and say they're the same thing when the situations, even body count, is extremely different.
if you look historically back through the Israeli record of war, every time they went into battle, the moment their first Israeli died, they called retreat. Because they went, God's not on our side in this battle. We retreat. You win. Don't kill us. We give up. Because they knew God wasn't on their side.
Where do you see that?
All through the Old Testament.
Well, then why were they slaughtered then by their enemies? You know?
They were slaughtered not when they were going out to fight, but when they weren't fighting. All these slaughters we see is when the Israelis aren't fighting back. There's no biblical excuse like you're wanting to apply to it for the revolution of the founding fathers of America. It's not there.
Well, why? What makes anybody think that England had the right to rule us to begin with?
They were British citizens. They came.
So?
Because they received charters
They
from
left.
England.
They left to get away from that junk.
They left under permission to be able to follow their own sect of Christianity. The king said, yes, you can go practice that Christianity where you won't be harassed by the people around you. You're still British citizens. We're still going to take care of you. You're still going to pay taxes. We'll still defend you with our armies.
I don't want to pay taxes. I want to live over here.
You realize we pay more tax now than they did then.
Oh, I'm not. I don't doubt that at all.
And we have this representation based off of democracy where if you're one voice amongst five, then you're not represented anymore. If you're talking about congressional elections, talking about presidential elections, then you're not really represented at all because the Electoral College can decide to vote any way they want to.
But they don't.
157 times.
They have.
But it hasn't changed anything.
Okay. Okay, do we have the facts straight from the last election? I got them here, okay? Clinton got 65 million of the popular votes, and Trump got 62 million.
So 3 million difference.
Yeah, Clinton got 3 million more, but electorally, Clinton only got 232 electoral college votes. Trump got 306.
How many did she get?
She got 3 million.
What?
She got 3 million votes more.
232?
232 to 306.
Yeah.
Difference of about 60 something.
And it says,
That's 538. How many electoral college votes are there altogether?
well, 232 plus 306, whatever that is.
Well, Donald Trump was smart enough to campaign to win.
Okay, here's a side note. Okay, 7 electors voted for someone other than their party's candidate. So 7 of them.
7, not 5.
7 of them flip flop.
In that last election?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, so it didn't affect the actual election,
Well,
no.
okay.
But it still makes the point of voting moot for anyone in those 7 people's areas. Because those 7 people's votes, they didn't go for who their area voted for.
They usually do.
But it didn't
No,
change.
they don't.
They usually do.
157 times they haven't.
They-
Usually,
How
does not
many votes
exist.
have there been over the history?
I don't know. But I'm just
If
saying,
we're
it
only on,
happens.
listen, if we're only on president, what, 48, 52? If we're on president 52, and 157 times it's happened,
No,
that's a significant amount
All right,
of
tell me.
electoral college members
All right.
that have not voted with what they were supposed
Okay,
to.
in the state of Texas, just our own state, how many electoral college members do we have?
I don't know.
I don't
Look it
know.
up.
You'd have to
Do
look
you know
that
what off
up.
the top of your head?
No, I don't know. But if one of those electoral college members votes against what the people says, and there's 200 electoral college members,
Yeah. Okay.
What difference is that
But
one little
here's
bitty
my
guy
question.
gonna make?
Here's my question to you.
Okay.
If it's your electoral college person, how do you feel?
If he's the guy representing you, and you voted for Trump, and then he turns around and goes, no, I'm going to cast my vote for Hillary. But he's representing
overall,
you.
No,
overall,
that's not,
it's gonna,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it
Because
does matter.
overall
It does matter.
isn't what the electoral college is supposed to look at.
Here's the
It's their
thing.
state.
Okay, here's the thing.
They're not
In the last election, 7 people that flip flop wouldn't have changed anything.
That's what I'm talking about.
Because the
It doesn't change
margin,
anything.
because Trump, it only takes, it says, takes 270 electoral college votes to win. So Trump won by 36.
Yep.
So them 7 flip flops didn't make a difference.
Except he didn't get all 7.
Yeah, he didn't get all 7.
No, I'm not saying he
Bernie
did.
Sanders got
They
one of
could
them.
have been 7 for him, and they voted for Hillary.
The point I'm making, and the point Bill's trying to make, is not that the electoral college made a difference. The point is, if that person was to flip flop and he represented you,
Yeah.
your vote no longer mattered.
Yeah, I understand.
That's the point that's being
I
made.
understand Bill's point completely.
Yeah,
I do.
that's the only
I don't
point.
think Ken's getting the point. I understand it. I may not agree with it, but I understand what he's saying. Okay,
Yes,
I like to I vote because I like to bitch.
exactly.
Okay. I like the
me,
bitch.
And I believe personally that this part down here that says show honor where honor
Yeah.
already invalidates me from bitching.
See, and then
So even if I voted, I'm already invalidated from being able to do that.
So he does.
Yeah, right.
And you
Because-
So
won't
I don't
hear
do
Bill.
that.
You won't hear Bill do it.
I support, and when someone starts bitching around me in a personal conversation, hey man, that's the president. Don't talk like that.
He's done that to me before because
I've straight up told him, hey man,
like you said, I
that's
just
our
read
president.
everything. I mean,
I've done it online. I've defended Obama. I've defended Trump. I've defended
Because
Bush.
they already ordained
Because I'm,
people.
hey, wait. No. Honor. You have to honor these people.
Well,
Why is there a
that's
difference
like
between that and pastors?
I'm just saying the specific instance.
No,
It doesn't
I'm
support
asking you,
that.
why is there a difference between our president and legislature and who we elect
Okay.
and the authority of pastors?
I mean, that's what we were talking about the whole last time we were here.
Yeah.
The Bible never set those people up as authority over the church. They set them because the Bible says it over and over and over again. He set them up to be leaders. This person leads and this person follows. And that's not what authority of a pastor means. Authority of a pastor means you do what I tell you to do or you leave. And that's not how I think we're set up.
No, that's wrong.
I've been in several churches that have done that. Gateway does that. We'd go to chapel, and every other chapel they'd get up on stage and they'd say, if you don't agree with every jot and tittle that Pastor Robert teaches, there's the door. We don't want you working here. We don't want you going to this church.
Who said that?
At Gateway, he just
The
said
executive pastors at Gateway. That's their viewpoint. And that's not supported by the Bible.
He didn't say, right. They're not saying, if you don't agree with the Bible, then get out.
No, they're saying if you don't agree with
this
Pastor
man,
Robert's teachings,
this man,
there's the door.
You do realize this discussion ran everyone else out.
I know.
No, I'm dead serious.
Hey,
that's why everyone walked out.
I think it's a fun discussion though.
You do, but everyone else left. I'm just pointing that out. We literally ran everyone else out of fellowship.
but they weren't really participating in any discussion either.
Well, they were fellowshipping.
Well, they're still fellowshipping, except for Avery and Timmy leaving.
Are the kids done?
I don't think Avery
check.
participated
Oh, come on.
in the discussion.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking when they're at
Well, there's different types of discussion. I mean, making everyone dizzy again.
Okay, bye. Join us next week. Listen to the podcast. Here's the website.
I'll call her.